Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, sometimes when you're going extreme, you've got to go deep. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more, as always. My name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because quite frankly, you're listening right now. If you are, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the old like and the 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, we're on the Instagram, we're on the TikTok, and we're on the Letterboxd for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because, you know, if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please, pay us a visit. On this episode, we're still catching up a little bit of hot dogs. We got a few more coming out. The festival did end properly yesterday, but we are streaming online for another day. So if you get a chance, you should check out the film we're about to talk about. It's called Subterranean, and it's the story of two gritty teams of hobbyist explorers who are on the cusp of discovering some new territory. They're going cave diving in various settings across Canada, the Rocky Mountains, Vancouver Islands. One of them is doing the longest, exploring the longest cave. The other one's doing a deep cave dive. They're very different, but they're very the same, and they're also really fascinating. And we had the unique pleasure of talking with the director of the film, the one only Francois-Xavier de Ruydts. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. But he was a fascinating guy who got in with these climbing crews and really documented what it meant to climb down as opposed to climbing up. I mean, you know, for these guys, the summit is kind of when they hit the basement, which is psychologically a really different thing because, you know, they don't have to go downhill to go home. They got to go uphill to go home. And that is an entirely different beast. And that's kind of what makes this film so incredibly fascinating. But like I said, if you are within the sound of my voice in Canada, you've got one more day to stream, and that's probably today. But first, check out our conversation with Francois-Xavier, because, quite frankly, it's a darn good one. All right, well, just to kick it off officially, I mean, obviously, thank you so much for the time today. And honestly, congratulations on the film, man. I was absolutely enthralled by it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Can you walk me through sort of the origin of wanting to sort of do this deep dive? Because, I mean, I think what I really appreciated about it was sort of the delineation and sort of the difference between what the longest cave means and what the deepest cave means.
Yeah. You mean the motivation for the filmmakers?
Exactly. Yeah. Just to show us the difference kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, caving is not an easy story to tell. Because it's not like you have a mountain and a summit and you want to reach the summit. Caving is a long operation. It takes sometimes generations to explore a cave. So how do you tell a story like that? So we're looking for, you know, true Canadian stories that were kind of pushing the limits and that had understandable goals. And for us, the longest and the deepest made sense. And those are the areas where like the most prominent Canadian teams were operating at the moment, and we had good contact with them, so kind of made sense for us.
Was everyone on board to participate? Because I mean, obviously the act of caving is dangerous in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't easy. I had known a lot of these people for years, which definitely helped. It was not the first expeditions I was having with them. However, convincing them that their story was worth a film was not easy. And, you know, having like a film crew on the team during these super hard and deep expeditions is really hard. Like it takes time and effort, and so I'm really grateful that that they had us on board for sure.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that amazed me because, I mean, some of the photography in this film is just absolutely beautiful. And I mean, essentially, for all intents and purposes, like you're kind of shooting in the dark. I mean, can you walk me through just how you managed to even light some of these places?
Yeah, I guess that's the really interesting thing about caving for me as a filmmaker is that not many people get to see it, and also it's got lots of challenges. So it's not easy to get an image, but when you do get one, it's usually pretty cool. And we had two stories in two completely different settings. One was the deepest cave in Canada, in the Rockies. This is like super hard to reach. 2 days of caving just to get to the bottom and stuff like that. So big expeditions. On Vancouver Island, it was the longest cave in Canada, but those were day trips. So very different filming wise. And so on the day trips, when I had a good cinema camera and a team with me, I mean, mostly one other person, to hold the lights and so on. And mostly we were able to recharge at night because we were back home. The Bisaro Anima, the deepest cave in Canada, we'd go for 8 days
Oof.
underground without going back to the surface. So you can imagine how it would be to have the power to power your camera for that long with no access to solar panels or anything like that. So we had to go with a very different mindset and very different approach gear-wise, much smaller cameras and a lot of batteries that we had to use very cautiously. But that for sure, like you can't just take out your camera and start shooting. It's like, okay, guys, can I take a shot? It's just going to take 5 minutes. Can you go there with the lights? Like it's not easy to film the moment. But sometimes we were able to just be in the moment with them, which was awesome. Thanks to
Now,
that amazing technology.
well, yeah, of course. And I mean, there's a line in the film, I forget who specifically said it, but just the sort of during the act of caving, like there is no summit, there is kind of no moment of glory. When you hit bottom, you're quite literally at the bottom and you have to sort of drag your way back up it again. Like, I
Yeah.
love that this film really kind of highlighted the psychology of people who want to cave. Like for you, as you were talking to everyone, was that something that became evident, or was it sort of something that you had to kind of like coax out of them?
Well, like I said, it was kind of the hard part of the storytelling
Right.
is like, what is their goal? What's the end of the film? Because there's
Yeah.
no end to a cave. It just gets too small or too deep or too complicated to go until you have new technology maybe or a new team or anything like that that helps you to keep pushing further. But the end of the cave is basically, okay, you give up. You don't want to do that cave anymore. That's the end of a cave. It's not like a summit where you can, take a selfie at the summit and you made it. You did it. So yeah, the psychology behind it is really interesting. And I'll always remember one caver once told me, the best part of caving is when you get out of the cave. And maybe it tells you a little bit about the psychology, that desire to, I guess, suffer. And maybe their goal without really knowing is that it helps them appreciate normal life better. At least it's what it did to me. you know when I went back home after months of filming, I was like, oh, it's so good to just have a roof over my head and not be cold and wet all the time. I guess that's one of the points of caving.
Yeah. And I mean, the film really did go out of its way to be be very respectful of the process and really sort of make us as a viewer understand sort of the inherent dangers there, and especially when it comes to caving underwater, which I mean to me is just, I mean, we heard about it obviously in the news with those kids in Thailand, but I mean sort of the inherent danger of just the act of caving is something that, at least from my perspective, public audiences don't necessarily have a full understanding of.
Yeah. I mean, caving is not the most dangerous adventure sport. There are dangers for sure. But, skydiving and rock climbing and things like
Right.
that, are probably more dangerous. The thing with caving is that there's no rescue. There's if you break a leg underground, you'll have to get out on your own. You can't just call the helicopter. So that's the main danger. I mean, most accidents in caves involve someone breaking a leg or breaking a back or anything like that. They don't die instantly, but then what do you do then? And that's when it gets complicated. These are super long rescues, sometimes days or weeks. And that's where the danger comes, I guess, is how do you keep someone alive long enough to get them out of the cave injured? So that's the main danger of caving, I guess.
Well, and I suppose it's
No
just having
rescue.
the right psychological makeup as well, right? Because I mean, when we think of falling out of a plane or falling off of a cliff, it feels different than being sort of stuck, miles underground.
Yeah, it plays on your nerves for sure. The first time I went down Bisaro Cave, which is the deepest cave in Canada, I hadn't been in such a deep cave before. I had been caving quite like a few years, but having to sleep underground for many days really plays on your nerves, and especially when you're not used to it. And then you get tired. You get more and more and more tired. For me, there was also a lot of stress involved in the filming process. And but then you still almost a kilometer underground, and you're like, it took me that much energy to come down. How am I gonna be able to go back up, which actually takes more energy than going down, of course. And that's when you gotta have strong nerves.
Are these caves primarily sort of in mountain ranges and sort of more on the West Coast? Or, I mean, are there caves similar to this all across the country?
There are, but yeah, there's a few caves in the eastern part of the country, but most like prominent caves are in BC and yeah, the Rockies and Vancouver Island. Yeah, you need limestone. That's the main thing for a cave. You need limestone, and most limestone is either in the Rockies or on Vancouver Island.
No, I mean, I've got to ask, have you had a chance to show this film to the people you went down into the caves with?
I was actually wondering, I think in the process of sending them the film, but I don't think they've seen it yet because I think I would know. They've seen the trailer. It was a tough one for us. To be able to please a general audience, but also please the cavers themselves. Cavers are interesting people, and they're very specific about what they want and the science and so on. And so it's hard for a filmmaker to tell a compelling story and please these kind of guys at the same time, like being precise and inclusive, including everyone. The other thing is, for a good story, you need heroes, but
Yeah.
caving doesn't really work like that, not all the time at least. It's a group effort. And it goes over like several generations, like I said. So it's hard to kind of point out one hero that's going to make your story. And again, in this case for us, it was a little bit easier because those people were kind of obvious heroes. But then, like you saw the film, Frank at the end of the film leaves the country and
Yeah.
goes live another life. It's probably going to stop caving, and so you're going to see a new hero pushing the limits of those caves, right? So yeah, people change, and it's definitely a group effort.
What is it about this kind of story that draws you in as a storyteller? Because I mean, like I was saying before, I mean, you're obviously very respectful of the craft, but also not neglecting kind of the entertainment side of it as well. There's a very sort of even balance in this film.
Yeah, I think one of the main questions for me, probably not when I started, but when I started filming, I was like, why exactly are these people doing that? And I think that's the question that kept pulling me forward in this endeavor, is to try to answer that question, because on as a filmmaker, you're yourself on a journey, and myself, I was on a big journey, had big personal questions to answer and so on, and especially on my environmental impact and so on. And I was filming these guys doing something that for most people, it doesn't mean anything. Like, why would you do that? Like, go crawl in the dark for days for no apparent reason. And so for me, it was really important as a filmmaker to answer that question. The why do you do it? And so that took us down a rabbit hole of human psychology, and try to understand the human drive towards danger and exploration, and wanting to push the limits all the time. So I guess that's the thread that drove us through that adventure.
No, I definitely see that, and I mean it definitely takes it to a different level. I mean, it reminds me of that old joke is like, why did man want to, learn how to climb a mountain? And somebody just said, because they can. And I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of really sort of encapsulates the whole experience as well. It really speaks to sort of the essence of human nature and wanting to really explore these unknown universes that we have, obviously, in our own country, in our own backyards, in our own worlds. And I mean, just to put a bow on this, I mean, I've got to ask, because in watching the film, I did get that sense of camaraderie and a little bit of humor as these teams like go further and further into the ground. But I have to ask, did you get invited to join the band? Because seeing the idea of the band actually put a big smile on my face as these people were climbing further and further below the earth.
Oh, you mean the band of cavers?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we also have a music band in the
Oh, the
in
music,
the
that's what I
film.
meant. The music band. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, join a music band as a musician?
Yes.
I'd love to. I mean, that would be awesome. Yeah, it's probably my favorite, at least most funny part of the film is that cavers music band playing underground. That would be an awesome experience. As far as joining the cavers in their adventures, I mean, I did for work. Doing so for leisure, I don't think I would do it actually. uh, I'm a big fan of mountaineering, climbing, canyoneering. I've done it all. But caving is cool because I'm a curious person, but um, there's lots of suffering involved.
Yeah.
Lots of suffering. So a little bit maybe for the story and the photos and the images, definitely. I think it's fascinating, but for pure pleasure, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, just deep enough so they let you play in the band. No, that I completely
Yeah.
understand. But I mean, Francois, I think
Um,
you made a hell of a piece of work here. And I mean, I can't wait for audiences to see this at the festival. But I just want to say again, congrats on the work and thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you so much for your interest.
All righty.
I really appreciate it.
No problem,
Okay.
my friend. All right. Bye.
Bye bye.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.